Thank you and welcome to the show this morning. The topic this morning is meeting the needs of neglected and homeless or abused children. And we're fortunate to have with us to talk about some of the needs of abused and neglected children, Pastor KWalker. And I think that many of us are familiar with Pastor KWalker. He's been responsible for bringing individuals to us, and he has with him this morning Miss Ashley Burns, who is also an individual who has been responsible for dealing with abused and neglected children. And let me welcome you, Pastor Walker, and you, Miss Ashley Burns, to the show this morning. And to start off with you, Pastor, by having you to give us some information about your background, your education, and some of your experiences. And Ms. Burns will give us the similar kind of information dealing with her situation. Okay. And then we'll have an opportunity to get out of this first segment and then go into the next segment for 8 minutes dealing with this issue of meeting the needs of abused and neglected children. Let's do it from that perspective.
All right. Well, good morning to you also, Dr. Haney, and thanks again for allowing us the opportunity to come on your show. You know your show has been running for years and it's a very informative show, and I think a lot of people out there watching and a lot of people are being informed. My name is Pastor KWalker. I'm no stranger here, of course, been almost like a sidekick to you for some
from the very, very beginning.
Yes, sir.
For many years.
And I appreciate you and everything you do. I was born right here in Nashville, Tennessee. Two good parents. You know, they raised me right way, raised me well. I didn't always take heed to what they said. You know, I was educated in the public school system up until a point. You know, I always say I got kicked out of the school system. Went into the United States Navy, stayed a short period of time, got out of there, and pursued a GED through Opportunities Industrialization Centers, OIC. Spent 6 months doing that, got the GED, and then went to Tennessee State University. Had a desire to become a fashion designer, but got caught up in drug addiction and the like, and they kind of derailed that along the way and ended up incarcerated in the state prison system for a period of time in my life. But back in 1986, on August 24th, God divinely intervened in my life, changed my life, you know, brought me in, called me into ministry, and I've been serving others ever since that time, you know, and trying to make contact with people that are out here on the ground, getting things done in terms of helping and serving people in whatever way and whatever capacity. It just gives me pleasure to be here today to bring on the show Mrs. Ashley Burns. You know, and I met her through the juvenile court system after my daughter was murdered back in March the 24th, 2015, and we went to take custody of our grandchildren, my wife and I, grandchildren. So that's how we met.
Very good. And Ms. Burns, let's talk about your background, your education, some of your experiences.
Absolutely. And then I have some personal experience as well that brought me into this field. Well, first of all, my education is I'm a TSU graduate. Actually started my first year at UT Martin and then finished it out at TSU. My major was completely different. Was fighting for what I knew that I was supposed to be, even though I didn't know exactly what that was. I knew it was something to do with children, but I wasn't sure. And got interested because I was failing my pre-med classes. I ended up pursuing in child advocacy. Was thinking about an attorney, but knew I wanted to be more of a advocacy role than actually what an attorney because of the politics. Actually wanted to be more of what, even though there was a lot of stigma with, of course, you don't make a lot of money, and as a case manager. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna go that route, even though, because this is my passion. And I realized that more and more. I did an internship with juvenile court when I was at TSU, working at juvenile court. I was interning for probation officer at Elizabeth Dial, and just fell in love with that kind of work. And I realized because of my background, because it was so rocky, I was the first one that graduated in my family, in my immediate family. I wanted to pursue something that involved the court, especially when it came to delinquency and actually child abuse. I think there's a big correlation with that. More than we realized, and that was kind of my focus, even though and that was my love, is to work with the delinquent children because there is such a big correlation with the abused and neglected child.
Very
in that
good,
correlation.
and I think we have, Pastor, an excellent show here.
Yes.
That will give us a lot of information. I think that your background and your activities will be very, very important in terms of helping us to see some of the needs of some of the abused and neglected children. And of course, we're going to take our first commercial break, and we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. Is, you know, that's, and I think that's always the best. And so we've got 8 minutes when we come back, Pastor. And then we'll start off with you. What do you want to talk about neglected children and abused children? I mean, that's our general topic, but what would you like to say for about 3 or 4 minutes in reference to that? And then he'll take about 3 minutes, and then we'll come back with you for second statements, about 2 minutes, and then we'll end that segment with you. Okay. But we'll start with you.
Yeah, well, I'll focus on what the court is doing, and then I'll go into some of the just intervention type of deal that I like to focus on with the community and being a support. Yeah,
that's good. In other words, you'll give us an opportunity to see what the juvenile justice system is all about in a real sense. Is that what we're saying?
I'm definitely going to try. Yes.
Okay, well that's all, and we've got 8 minutes.
I think a lot of people are not aware of that.
Just take the first 2 or 3 minutes and talk about that, and then he'll have an opportunity, and so we'll just divide the 8 minutes between the two of you, 3 minutes, 3 minutes, 2 minutes, a minute, and et cetera, you know, back and forth like that, to give both of you an opportunity to have a good stretch of minutes to make some, excuse me, some statements.
It's your show.
Said it. That's awesome.
I don't mind going on mute.
Thank you, excuse me, thank you, and welcome back to the show this morning. The topic this morning is meeting the needs, excuse me, of abused and neglected children. And we're fortunate to have with us again Pastor KWalker and Miss Ashley Burns. Ms. Burns, let's have you to take a few minutes of this segment to give us some information in reference to some of the things that you do as a person who has been involved with neglected and abused children.
Well, first of all, I want to say that I've been with the court for 10 years. I've been in at least 2 different positions with the court. There has been a lot of changes. First I started at Family Services, and then I think about 4 or 5 years. Then I worked with supervised probation, and now the court is moving in a different direction with our new judge, Sheila Calloway. I believe this is going to come up her 4th year. And she is focusing on more of intervention and community supporting the families that we serve, and especially prevention before they even get to the court, or if it can be handled in a formal way. So they're really trying to focus on that, and that's stretching us as well of how can we meet the needs of children, because regardless of how they're coming, there is an issue with abuse and neglect. Anytime you deal with drug addiction, anytime you deal with the different issues that they're faced, whether it be directly an NND issue, even children just screaming at their children, still that could result. If not, maybe that kid to be violent if we don't address the needs. And they're simple needs, like it might be a program, or it might be a connection. Hey, do you know somebody that that does this or that? I tell my families all the time, just because I close your case doesn't mean you can't call me. And if I can't find out the answer, I'll definitely try to find out who can. And that's the big part of it. It's the simple things that we can do in the community. It's building those relationships, calling people back when you say you're going to call people back, treating them with respect. Because no matter what, I realized from one of the major big support systems of juvenile court. Icon, in my opinion, of juvenile court, Miss Julia Tucker just passed away. And she was been at the court for years. And she always said, when I did my internship, treat people the way you would want to be treated. And you're going to be okay out there on the streets and doing the case management and that kind of thing. Because we're in some dangerous situations a lot of times and don't even realize it because of the covering of being more of a support instead of, how dare you did this, oh my gosh, you did this. Instead, we're focusing more on how can we make simple solutions. It might be my 4-year-old grows out of her clothes, I give them to the neighbor next door in our community. And of course, we're out there, right there in James Casey. There's 2 offices out there with juvenile court. So it's the simple things that we can get involved, whether it be something big that is on national TV or on the TV, or something that is more under the radar. It's all very important, and I think we all need to be encouraged more as being out there in the field as case managers and workers. It's very draining, and to know that we are doing something. It might be something small. I considered it small what I did with Pastor Walker. I just did a home study, but in even God's eyes, that's big to do the little things. And of course, the negativity of this world does want us to say that we're not doing enough, but it's to do something.
Just to be there is very, very important. Is that what she's saying, Pastor?
Yeah, especially with the support that the course is leaning toward doing now. That's what I'm hearing. The course is wanting to not just bring people in and just adjudicate them, but to offer a means of prevention, and then even if when they get into the system, to be able to support them in such a way to help a person grow from where they are when they initially come in. Because I think, Dr. Haney, when you take a child that's neglected, and you take a child, let me say it like this, you take a child that's acting out in school, in a lot of situations, it's stemming from the fact that that child's probably neglected at home. You take a child that maybe gets frustrated in school because they can't keep up academically with other children, and the reason why they're not keeping up because maybe the parent is not helping them at home with their homework and getting involved and showing concern with them, so they get in the school system, and then they don't know what the other children know, and then you get frustrated, and then they begin to act out in a setting like that. And those are things that I see as neglect, but a lot of times parents that are neglecting children in such a way may not be seeing that and may not notice and understand that when you don't meet the needs of those children, then you're neglecting those children. And I think that, as far as I'm concerned, with myself personally, the fact that I had the opportunity, the privilege to become an adult, I should lend my voice and my support, to children, to be able to help them, to be a voice for them, to be a support for them, to be a help for them, so that they can have an opportunity to grow up as well and to live a peaceful and productive and constructive life.
You're thinking in terms of what you do every day, Ms. Ashley, what would you say that one of the biggest challenges that you have to face dealing with children that are abused or neglected? What are some of the 1 or 2 large things that loom in your mind that if we could change this, things would be much better?
I think one of the biggest changes, of course, it's with ourselves anytime we're struggling, is changing that will. I was discussing with Pastor Walker about, like, when you say parenting classes, or if you say, it's all how you approach, especially the families, because again, we got to realize, okay, where do we start with? What is the actual problem? It might be the parent, or they might be just at their ends right with everything that's going on. They might be dealing with a murder. I dealt with a family over the phone before I got here that the mother is struggling with her son just got killed, and then her daughter's in drug addiction. So it's just one of those things of what can you do to support that, of thinking authentically and out of the box. Like maybe not to focus that it's parenting classes, maybe to focus that it's that it's with the Pacific issue of maybe twisting it of just some encouragement.
Okay, and so what we're going to do actually is to take our second commercial break, and then we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. About, because anything that you might say is probably news to a large number of folks who are watching this. They might know something about the system, but you know, I think you can give them an example of what is going on and some of the challenges that you have to face living with these children.
Okay.
Okay, so this will be our 10-minute segment.
Okay.
Now we're going to start this 10-minute segment off with you.
Okay.
And then you take about 3 or 4 minutes, and then you will take about 3 or 4 minutes, and then we'll give you and probably have about a minute a piece. Yes, ma'am.
All right, great. There we're stand
by. Thank you, and welcome back to the final segment of the show for today. We're talking to Pastor Walker and Miss Ashley Burns, and the topic is meeting the needs of neglected and abused children. And Pastor Walker, let's talk about, over the last 10 minutes that we have, some of the things that you think that our audience ought to know in terms of how we might be able to greater deal with some of the children that are neglected or abused. And Ms. Burns will sort of tie into what you're talking about, and she'll take about 3 or 4 minutes, and then we'll go back and eventually end this show for today.
Well, you know, Dr. Henry, I think one of the things I think adults need to open, as adults, we need to open our eyes and pay more close attention to youth. Not only our own children, but children in general. Because children are experiencing, you know, in this day and age, peer pressure that these children are facing in this day and age, man, it's just unbelievable. And they are displaying certain behaviors and character defects and faults and stuff like that. And instead of criticizing and talking about, and that's a bad little boy right there, that's a mean little girl, and that kind of stuff like that, you know, I think we should be trying to find a way to ask ourselves, you know, there's got to be a reason. There's something at the core there that's causing this child to maybe act this way or behave this way. And as the topic suggests, we're talking about meeting the needs, because if a child is, in my opinion, if a child is acting out in a way that's really just, you know, off the track.
Outrageous in a real sense.
Yeah, you know, there's got to be something there. In a lot of cases, you know, there's some neglect. There's a lack of love maybe that's being shared with that child, you know, and that child is rebelling against the fact that they're not being loved and cared for and nourished the way that my Bible tells us that we should do. You should nourish a child. And I'll be the first to say that I wasn't the greatest parent, you know, around, because at that time I was caught up in my own active drug addiction when I was young, and I was wild and stuff like that when my boys and stuff were born and stuff. So, you know, but I grew. I had a desire to be a good parent, you know, and I grew into it. You know what I'm saying?
Most people do.
Yeah, but you know, you got folks out here that think they know what they're doing, and to suggest to them, you know, why don't you do a parenting class or something like that? And that's like, oh, parenting class, you know, I got this, you know, you do a parenting class.
Anybody can be a parent. Yeah. Is that what we're, and I would imagine you run across that kind of attitude quite often in what you do, Ms. Burns.
Right, and it's approach, I think, is important, because how do we break those barriers? Because a lot of these families, you know, and just like ourselves, we all have a history, you know, with how do we, a lot of them have been abused and neglected or in drug addiction, and some of them are still active. So how can we break those barriers? And I think Pastor Walker said one of the keys is love, because a kid and everybody needs love. And how do you access that to, because as children, they have to have that in order to survive. They have to, and when I do home studies, I'd have grandparents, they'd be very concerned and, I would say freaking out about, their well-being of their child. And I'm like, look, there's plenty of kids. I worked in DCS in foster care for a year. I was like, look, there's plenty of kids out there that have nobody. I said, but they have you. And that's very important, because that is what's going to make the difference. With love, things will make a difference. And that's important. And then the challenge that I have, and I think workers that care about people and that are trying really hard not to be jaded, is how do you get somebody to really know that you care about them, and you're not being judgmental, but you're actually doing that because you do care. So how do you show that? And in reality, it's to just be natural with it, to be concerned, and I'm here if you choose it. But unfortunately, we do have to deal with people's will. But we do our best, and we definitely continue to do what we can. And prayer is a big part of that too, of being focused, of what do I need to do? Because I could be focused all over the place, but what do I need to do to be focused? And it's so it's important to tell them to be very real and be honest, because and again, the court is not being punitive at all, but then in my mind, children do need those boundaries, and then a lot of them don't have the parents that need to show them the boundaries. So how do we do that as a community? I think that's what's very frustrating for me, that because I have to be so candid with some of the kids of like, if I see your name in obituary somewhere, I can say I tried, but you gotta want to. And I maybe some people would disagree with my approach, but I have to be real and honest. And also I have a conscience, and I really do care about families, of saying if something did happen, because I've only had one so far. And I can honestly say when I went to the funeral that I tried. And I think as society, we have to have that. And we have to break down the barriers of where we're not so jaded, where we're still in this fight to love one another. And not talking about no love of letting them do whatever they want. That's not real love. Love is, I'm going to fight for you despite of all the resistance that you're showing. I always give my families, that what comes to mind every time I talk to them is, you may go over me, you may go under me, but if I see you jumping off a cliff or jumping off the deep end, my hands are gonna fly. I'm gonna try until it's all said and done. And then if you go over me or under me, then that's your business. But at least I can say with my conscience, I've done it. I think that's the key to this work, because it's a serious, it's important work. It's the very, what makes society, worth living, what makes life worth living. It's very important, and I think a lot of us get jaded in this work, and we have to continue to fight.
As a matter of fact, I think one of the most important things, I think we've said this on many occasions, Pastor, and we talk about love, and I think that no matter what situation a child or an individual might be in, if you demonstrate to that individual, no matter who you are or who that child or who that person might be, that you have respect, understanding, goodwill toward them, and that you wish them the best.
Absolutely.
And I think that if you demonstrate that to an individual, no matter what situation that they might come from, I think that they're able to buy into some of the things. As a matter of fact, you have to demonstrate that before you can start teaching them anything.
Oh yes, it's amazing, because with my excuse me, with my grandchildren, they're just out of the blue. Granddaddy, what? I love you, and Granny, I love you, and come and want to hug. Sometimes I'll be asleep, they'll come wake me up. I just want to hug, But it's because we're showing them that kind of love. And when you look at love attracts, and you see young people being attracted to these gangs. It's because these gangs are showing a strange kind of love that's attracting these young people to the gangs, because they feel like, they got a sense of camaraderie there, and there's a sense of loyalty, and they're making them feel like, you know, you're wanted, you're needed, you belong, you know, you're loved. But it's a strange kind of love, but at the same time, it's attracting them, you know. But that love, there's a power in this thing called love.
Love is strange.
Yeah, and it's a powerful thing, you know. And if you walk in it consistently, and you fashion and form your life based upon how can I meet an individual's need as opposed to what can I get from this individual. I think you have a better way, and especially like breaking that barrier down, and when you're trying to reach these families to make them see that, you know, that there is a need for them to maybe get some training in terms of how to raise a child. If you approach them, again, if it's from a foundation of love, people can sense it, people can feel it, people can identify with it. Even the coldest heart, you know, the power of love will penetrate it.
It will.
Yeah, it penetrates it.
Ms. Burns, the final minute of this show.
Also, I think it's good to talk about resiliency, because even when you're dealing with what people would consider the meanest or the baddest, there's still beauty within that person of what can we access, how can we access them to meet their full potential. And that's what I love about even the delinquent, what's considered the delinquent child, is how can we, because the more resistance, actually the more that greater they can be. Because if they could come out of the gangs, if they could come out and show that love, how many others can they reach?
Very good. And of course, Pastor and Ms. Burns, let me thank the two of you for being here with us this morning. And let me encourage our audience to tune in again next week for another informative edition of Comments. Thank you and good morning.